Today I'm joined by Angus McDonald, the CEO of Barbeques Galore. Barbeques Galore is more than 40 years old and is Australia's largest specialty retailer of grills and smokers, accessories, outdoor furniture and heating. The company includes 87 company-owned and franchise stores. To ensure the company remain relevant at the forefront of its sector and engaging for its loyal customers, Angus's first role in the top job was to transform the much-loved brand. The changes were well received and quickly reinstated Barbeques Galore's position as a leader in its retail category in Australia. Once the transformational stage had been implemented, Angus saw an opportunity to continue and improve the company's strategic vision. To achieve this, Angus quickly realised he needed to invest in the team's professional development to ensure the team was well placed to continue to provide superior service to its valued and loyal customer base. This also included to his own development as an effective leader. And to do this, he partnered with the team at Executive Performance Partners. Thank you, Angus, for your generosity in sharing your story and partnership with the team at Executive Performance Partners. Thank you. Angus, you became the CEO of Barbeques Galore in 2019 and embarked on what some would call a very large transformational program pretty much immediately. What led you to this step? And talk me through the process you underwent to do this.
Yeah, well, thanks, and it's great to be here today. The journey from early on in joining Barbeques Galore in 2019 was really a very quick appreciation of the situation that the business had found itself in. And as you've mentioned before, a very well-established, well-recognised brand with a really long history and heritage in Australia. However, it had been through a period where the brand hadn't really changed much or evolved in some time in an environment when retail actually had been changing quite significantly. And so it was clear that we had to make some pretty radical changes to really reposition the business and bring it forward into both the modern age, but also thinking about how we wanted to engage with our customers in the future. And so we had to move very quickly in terms of identifying some areas of the business that really just weren't working very well and make some immediate action around those, as well as much more clearly defining what it was that made our brand special and what we stood for, and then really much more clearly charting a way forward for how we would present a compelling offer for our customers.
That's a huge undertaking, particularly as the new CEO in a 40-year-old company. You outlined some of the steps you did. What were some of the key learnings of leading that transformation for you?
Well, one of the things that makes Barbeques Galore so special is the great strength of its team. We've got a really highly engaged team of people that are very passionate about our product and very passionate about our brand, and some great expertise in our business. We've got a very long average tenure of our employees. And so with that, there's a great wealth of knowledge and experience about our category and our brand. And so it's been really important to make sure that there's been a great deal of respect and appreciation for that, but at the same time, making sure that there's been a clear mandate for change so that without discarding some of the things that make our business special, also being ready to appreciate the need that we needed to move quite quickly in affecting change across the business.
And as mentioned when introducing yourself, the next stage, when any change at such a great speed that you've put forward, then you obviously need to ensure that the development of your leaders and your team marries to that change. And that led to you to do some self-reflection yourself?
Yeah, certainly. And if I think about the pace of change at which my first 18 months or so here in the company, it was very rapid. And to overlay that in the context of the environment that we were operating in, of course, the COVID-19 pandemic had arrived very much in the middle of when we were making some of those immediate changes. And, just to give some context, we had completed the implementation of a new ERP system. We'd closed a number of stores, opened a number of new stores, and launched a new store format and design. And we'd made significant changes to our range, deleting a large area of our product portfolio and then launching new products in their place. It was a pretty significant time, doing some work around our brand as well, and then navigating through the pandemic. And so that had really driven quite a fast pace of change and implementation. But as we've now established a much firmer base for the organisation, and we're starting to shift from that rapid transformation phase into now a more sustainable and much more future-focused growth phase of the business, I recognised that I needed to think about my own leadership style and think about adapting my leadership style for the changing needs of the business and of the team during what would be a different phase of growth for our business.
And that obviously brought you to engage executive performance partners. Talk me through why executive performance partners for that fundamental milestone in your career?
Well, what I think executive performance partners do differently and quite well compared to others in this space, and look, obviously there's lots of different people who offer their services in this area. What is unique about the approach that executive performance partners take has been a much more immersed approach in thinking about the context of the business and the environment that you're operating in. And so it's a really good blend of a very tactical, practical approach of how the things you're working on and the things that you're focused on day to day and week to week in the business and with the people you're working with every day, as well as thinking about some of those more longer term aspirations around how I could make myself a better leader and how I could help those around me also become better leaders.
You listed, or you started to list some of those key objectives that you wanted. It's clear that you're very result focused. What were some of the other core objectives you wanted to get out of this partnership?
Well, one of the good things about the way that the partnership was structured was there was a very clear focus on measurable outcomes, which is a tricky thing to do in this area. It's not always very easy to secure measurable outcomes from this sort of activity. But working with David was to actually determine some clear metrics of success. And within the first 6 months, we had some measures that we were continuing to focus on and make sure that our activities were oriented around supporting those, as well as some of those broader soft benefits that we were working to achieve. And so clearly very focused on driving operational performance, but also thinking about some broader cultural measures around team engagement. They were also areas that we included as targets in that initial phase of the plan and very much focused on throughout that period.
Without going into anything, obviously, in commercial confidence or betraying the trust of your team, are there any key examples or results that you would be open to sharing?
Well, what I would just say is broadly is that we have absolutely achieved a measurable improvement in the team member engagement across our organisation. We operate a regular team engagement survey process with all members of our team. And so that gives us a pulse check, if you will, as to how we're going at making sure that as a leadership team and as an organisation, we're connecting well with our team and we're making sure that they are feeling listened to and understood and that's informing our strategy moving forward. And one of the key things we wanted to do was to make sure that we could see measurable improvements in that area. And as a result of some of the reflections, absolutely as a direct result of the reflections that were made through some of those coaching conversations, we did make some changes in the way that we connected around those messages. And as a result, that's had a very visible transformation in the level of connection and engagement across our team through that time. So I guess it's a very good example actually of where some of those conversations with leaders in the organisation have very directly resulted in an improvement in performance.
And how often do you meet with your executive coach? And without, obviously, it's a personalised process, but is it weekly, fortnightly? What's the partnership for you, and why does that work?
Initially, an intense level of frequency in terms of meeting weekly, and that's a good way of actually establishing some great momentum. Once we'd settled into a more regular pattern, we have moved to a fortnightly conversation, but that's still, relatively often in a way that you're still able to really think about some of the more immediate things that are happening, as well as some of those broader strategic objectives.
And I know one of the things that's a war cry for the team at Executive Performance Partners is about the establishment of new habits and developing new techniques or habits that you can not only improve your own leadership, but also pass down to your team. What are some of those habits or techniques that you've really noticed have been implemented in your day-to-day?
Yeah, well, look, one of the approaches that came from some of those early conversations is a concept of what's called appreciative inquiry, and it's just a technique that Dave and I had talked through over a couple of those sessions to think differently about the way that you ask questions and the way that you engage with people across the organisation, and that's been something which I've been personally working quite intensely on over the last 6 months or so, and absolutely makes a difference in the level of connection and engagement with the team, not just your direct reports, but much more broadly across the organisation.
And you touched on it before, but one of the fundamental differences for executive performance partners and their VA clients is that mutual accountability. They're along the path or the road with you to your success of achieving your scorecard. Why is that so important for you?
Well, I guess like any executive, every minute of your time and every minute of resources that you spend needs to be well allocated. You've got to make sure that you're getting a return on that investment. And the approach of how we've worked together has made sure that that's been definitely the case. Every minute you spend doing one thing is a minute you not spending doing something else that could deliver a better return on time. And like probably many people, I guess, in my situation, you're very focused on your own productivity to make sure that you're maximising the impact that you're having on the organisation and on the people around you. And you don't want to be investing time in things that aren't delivering a material return. And so having that accountability around the way that we work through the process is making sure that the executive partner is contributing visibly, but also that I'm actually delivering against those commitments as well to make sure that the time invested does deliver a measurable return.
And what would you say to your peers who might be watching this about if they were considering an executive coach or calling the team at Executive Performance Partners? What would be the main selling point or recommendation you would make?
Yeah, look, it's a great question because I'm sure this is something that many people ask themselves about whether this is a good investment in themselves and a good investment in the greater organisation. And I think that's the way you have to think about it, is this is absolutely about maximising the value that you can bring as a leader to your organisation. And it is something that, making sure that there's a measurable outcome is part of that process, but also recognising that no matter how much experience you've got, no matter how good you are, no matter what your history, you can always be better. You can always find ways to refine and improve your approach and adapt to different situations. And having that approach to continuous learning is a really powerful way to make sure that you're learning along the way about how you can be a better leader. And I think even the best leaders anywhere are not above this sort of activity. And I think sometimes that can be a challenge, is to appreciate that, look, you don't know everything and you haven't seen it all before. And so having that opportunity and challenge and perspective from someone to help draw the best out of you is actually a really important investment, not just in your own development journey, but actually for the greater organisation as well.
Amazing. Angus, thank you so much for your time. You've been wonderful to have a chat with, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you.